February 14, 2003. The silence on Mount McKinley was broken only by the howling wind that cut through the Alaskan wilderness like a blade. 3 experienced mountaineers had vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but questions that would haunt investigators for 2 decades. Their names were etched into missing person files, their families left to wonder, their story reduced to whispered warnings around base camps. But what happened on that frozen peak wasn't an accident, and what scientists discovered 20 years later would challenge everything we thought we knew about survival, human endurance, and the secrets that glaciers keep buried in their ancient ice. The morning of February 12, 2003, felt electric with possibility at the Talkeetna Ranger Station. 3 climbers stood before the permit desk, their gear meticulously organized, their confidence radiating through the small room. Dr. Marcus Chen, a glaciologist from the University of Colorado, had been planning this expedition for 18 months. At 34, he was already considered one of the leading experts on ice formation patterns in extreme environments. His research on the Denali Massif had earned him grants, recognition, and the respect of his peers. But Marcus wasn't just there for science. He was there to prove a theory that his colleagues called impossible. Standing beside him was Sarah Kowalski, a professional mountain guide whose reputation preceded her throughout Alaska. At 29, she had successfully guided over 200 expeditions up Denali's treacherous slopes. Her weathered hands bore the scars of countless rescues. Her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen the mountain's fury firsthand. Sarah knew every crevasse, every wind pattern, every deadly trap that the peak could spring on unsuspecting climbers. If anyone could navigate the unpredictable conditions of an Alaskan winter, it was Sarah. The third member of their team was Tommy Rodriguez, a 26-year-old documentary filmmaker from Los Angeles, whose camera had captured some of the most breathtaking footage ever recorded in extreme environments. Tommy wasn't just along for the ride. He was there to document what Dr. Chen believed would be a groundbreaking discovery. Hidden deep within the glacier system of Mount McKinley, Chen was convinced lay evidence of climate patterns that could reshape our understanding of global warming. Tommy's job was to capture every moment of that discovery. The ranger processing their permits, Janet Williams, had seen thousands of climbers over her 15-year career. But something about this trio made her pause. Maybe it was the intensity in Dr. Chen's eyes when he described their planned route. Maybe it was the way Sarah kept checking and rechecking weather reports that showed a massive storm system moving in from the northwest. Or maybe it was Tommy's nervous energy as he tested and retested his equipment, muttering about battery life and memory cards. Whatever it was, Janet found herself lingering over their paperwork longer than usual. Their planned route was ambitious, even by Denali standards. They intended to establish base camp at 14,000 feet, then push toward an unexplored section of the Kahiltna Glacier, where Chen's satellite imagery had detected unusual ice formations. The area was remote, dangerous, and completely cut off from radio communication. Most experienced guides would have called it suicide. Sarah called it Tuesday. February 13th dawned clear and cold, the kind of deceptive calm that veteran mountaineers know to distrust. The trio loaded their gear onto a ski plane piloted by Bill Henderson, a bush pilot who had been flying climbers to Denali for over 20 years. As they lifted off from Talkeetna, Tommy captured footage of the endless white expanse stretching toward the horizon. The landscape below looked pristine, untouched, almost otherworldly in its beauty. None of them could have imagined that it would become their tomb. Henderson dropped them at base camp without incident. The weather was holding, visibility was good, and their equipment check revealed no problems. According to Henderson's logbook, the team was in high spirits as they unloaded their supplies. Dr. Chen was already taking ice core samples, Sarah was studying topographical maps, and Tommy was filming everything with the enthusiasm of someone documenting a great adventure. Henderson promised to return in 5 days for pickup, weather permitting. Those would be the last words any of them would exchange with the outside world. The first sign that something was wrong came on February 16th, when Henderson's return flight was grounded by a massive blizzard that had moved in faster than any weather model had predicted. Winds exceeded 80 miles per hour, temperatures plummeted to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and visibility dropped to 0. The storm raged for 3 days, making any rescue attempt impossible. When the weather finally cleared on February 19th, Henderson immediately flew back to their base camp coordinates. He found nothing. Not their tents, not their equipment, not even the snow cave they had planned to construct for emergency shelter. The entire base camp had vanished as if it had never existed. Henderson circled the area for hours, searching for any sign of the 3 climbers. The glacier below showed no evidence of an avalanche, no fresh crevasse formations, no disturbed snow patterns that might indicate where they had gone. It was as if the mountain had simply swallowed them whole. The search and rescue operation that followed was one of the most extensive in Alaskan history. Teams of experienced mountaineers combed every accessible inch of the glacier system. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scanned the ice for any trace of body heat. Ground-penetrating radar probed beneath the snow for buried equipment or remains. The search continued for 2 weeks, involving over 50 volunteers and costing the state nearly $200,000. They found nothing. Dr. Chen's colleagues at the university were baffled. Marcus was meticulous in his planning, obsessive about safety protocols, and intimately familiar with glacial environments. His research notes, recovered from his office, showed months of careful preparation. He had studied weather patterns, consulted with local guides, and even practiced rescue scenarios in Colorado's mountains. Everything indicated that he had taken every possible precaution. Sarah's friends in the guiding community were equally confused. Sarah didn't make mistakes on mountains. She had an almost supernatural ability to read weather patterns, to sense danger before it manifested, to make the hard decisions that kept people alive in impossible conditions. Her survival instincts had saved dozens of lives over the years. The idea that she had simply been caught off guard by the storm didn't make sense to anyone who knew her. Tommy's family flew up from Los Angeles, desperate for answers. His sister Maria spent weeks in Talkeetna, interviewing anyone who had seen the trio before their departure. Tommy had called his parents the night before leaving, excited about the project, confident about their chances of success. He had even joked about bringing back footage that would win him an Emmy. The Tommy she knew wasn't reckless. He was careful, methodical, and deeply respectful of the mountains he filmed. As months passed, the official investigation wound down. The case was classified as a mountaineering accident attributed to the sudden storm and the remote location of their base camp. The families held memorial services, but no bodies were ever recovered for burial. The mountain had kept its secret, and gradually the story of Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy faded from public memory. But the questions lingered. Why had 3 experienced mountaineers left no trace of their presence at base camp? How had an entire campsite disappeared without leaving debris scattered across the glacier? And why had the storm, which meteorologists later determined had been unprecedented in both its intensity and its rapid development, struck precisely when and where it did? Janet Williams, the ranger who had processed their permits, never forgot the unease she had felt that day. She kept copies of their paperwork in her personal files, along with newspaper clippings about the search and rescue operation. Every year on February 14th, she would pull out the folder and study their photos, wondering what she might have missed, what warning signs she should have recognized. Bill Henderson continued flying climbers to Denali, but he never forgot the 3 passengers he had dropped off that clear February morning. He would often fly over the area where their base camp had been, searching the ice below for any sign of them. Other pilots began to avoid the area, reporting strange weather patterns and unusual atmospheric disturbances that made navigation difficult. The families never gave up hope entirely. Dr. Chen's wife established a foundation that funded glacial research in his memory. Sarah's parents donated money to mountain rescue organizations across Alaska. Tommy's film equipment was donated to a school program that taught young people about documentary filmmaking. But despite these tributes, the central mystery remained unsolved. As years passed, the story took on an almost mythical quality among mountaineers. Guides would tell the tale to nervous clients as a cautionary story about respecting the mountain's power. Climbers would share theories around campfires, speculating about hidden crevasses, freak avalanches, or equipment failures. But none of the theories could adequately explain the complete disappearance of 3 experienced mountaineers and all their gear. The scientific community gradually moved on. Dr. Chen's research was completed by his graduate students. His theories about glacial ice formation were published posthumously, and his work contributed to our understanding of climate change. But the specific discovery he had been pursuing on that February expedition remained unknown. His research notes mentioned unusual satellite imagery and anomalous ice formations, but he had never shared the details of what he expected to find. What none of them could have known was that their story was far from over. Deep beneath the Kahiltna Glacier, preserved in ice that had remained frozen for millennia, something extraordinary was waiting. Something that would eventually surface as the glacier shifted and flowed down the mountain. Something that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about that February expedition and force us to confront the possibility that Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy had stumbled upon a discovery far more significant than anyone had imagined. The ice was patient, as ice always is. It held its secrets for 20 long years, slowly moving, constantly changing, gradually revealing what had been hidden in its frozen depths. The first indication that the glacier was about to reveal its secrets came in the summer of 2019, when a team of climate researchers from the National Science Foundation noticed something unusual in their satellite imagery. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a glaciologist who had taken over much of Dr. Chen's abandoned research, was studying ice flow patterns when she spotted an anomaly in the Kahiltna Glacier system. The ice appeared to be moving faster than historical models predicted, and there were strange reflections appearing in the satellite photos that shouldn't have been there. At first, Martinez dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction or atmospheric interference. Satellite imagery could be tricky, especially in the extreme conditions of the Alaskan wilderness. But as weeks passed, the anomalies became more pronounced. Something dark was showing through the ice, something that definitely wasn't rock or typical glacial debris. The shape was too uniform, too geometric to be natural formation. By early 2020, Martinez had convinced her department to fund a preliminary expedition to investigate the readings. But then the pandemic hit, shutting down research projects worldwide and forcing her to watch helplessly as the anomalies grew larger and more defined in each new satellite image. Whatever was trapped in the ice was getting closer to the surface with each passing month. The breakthrough came in March 2023, when a routine geological survey flight captured footage that would change everything. Pilot Sarah Chen, no relation to the missing Dr. Marcus Chen, was flying a standard mapping mission when her camera operator noticed something glinting in the afternoon sun. About 200 feet below the glacier's surface, embedded in what appeared to be a natural ice cave, were metallic objects that clearly didn't belong in the pristine wilderness. The footage was immediately classified by the National Park Service, but not before several researchers had seen enough to know they were looking at something unprecedented. The objects appeared to be equipment, camping gear, and what looked suspiciously like the remains of a base camp. But the positioning was all wrong. Instead of being scattered across the glacier's surface as debris from an accident would be, Everything was arranged in a deliberate pattern, as if it had been carefully placed there. Dr. Martinez assembled a team of specialists that included ice cave experts, forensic anthropologists, and military personnel trained in high-altitude recovery operations. The expedition that departed Talkeetna on June 15, 2023, was unlike anything that had ever attempted to reach that particular section of the Kahiltna Glacier. They brought equipment worth over $500,000, including thermal boring devices, specialized climbing gear, and communication systems that could penetrate the ice. What they discovered when they finally reached the anomaly site defied every expectation they had formed during months of planning. The ice cave was not a natural formation. It had been carved out with precision, its walls smooth and deliberately shaped. The metallic objects they had seen in the satellite imagery were indeed camping equipment, but they were arranged in a pattern that suggested intelligence, purpose, and most disturbing of all, recent human activity. Inside the ice cave, perfectly preserved by the sub-zero temperatures, they found Dr. Chen's research journals. The leather-bound notebooks were frozen solid but completely intact, their pages filled with handwriting that became increasingly frantic as the entries progressed. The early entries described routine scientific observations, ice core samples, and weather measurements. But as Martinez's team carefully thawed and photographed each page, the content became increasingly bizarre. Dr. Chen had discovered something in the glacier that he couldn't explain. His notes described ice formations that appeared to be artificial, geometric patterns carved into the glacier walls that followed mathematical principles he didn't recognize. He wrote about temperatures that didn't match his instruments, about compass readings that made no sense, about a humming sound that seemed to come from deep within the ice itself. More disturbing were his observations about his teammates. Sarah Kowalski, the experienced guide who never made mistakes, had begun acting erratically. According to Chen's notes, she was leading them deeper into the glacier system, following routes that weren't on any map, claiming she could hear voices calling to her from beneath the ice. Tommy Rodriguez had become obsessed with filming everything, but his camera equipment was malfunctioning in ways that violated basic physics. His footage showed images that weren't there when viewed with the naked eye. The final entries in Chen's journal were nearly illegible, written in a shaking hand that suggested extreme stress or fear. He described a discovery that he couldn't fully comprehend, something buried deep in the glacier that had been waiting for them specifically. The ice wasn't just preserving whatever they had found, it was protecting it, keeping it hidden until the right people came looking for it. Martinez's team spent 3 days carefully excavating the ice cave, documenting everything they found with scientific precision. In addition to the journals, they recovered Tommy's camera equipment, Sarah's climbing gear, and personal effects from all 3 missing mountaineers. But the most significant discovery came when they followed a tunnel that led deeper into the glacier, a passage that had been carved with tools far more sophisticated than anything the 2003 expedition could have carried. At the end of that tunnel, embedded in ice that carbon dating would later reveal to be over 10,000 years old, they found something that challenged every assumption about the history of human civilization in North America. The object was clearly artificial, constructed from materials that didn't exist in 2003, arranged in a configuration that suggested technology far beyond anything available to modern science. The implications were staggering. Either Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy had discovered something that had been waiting in the ice for millennia, or they had somehow become part of something much larger than a simple mountaineering expedition. The arrangement of their equipment, the precision of the ice cave, the mathematical patterns Chen had described in his journal all suggested that their disappearance hadn't been an accident. It had been an appointment. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. As Martinez's team prepared to extract the mysterious object for further study, they realized that the ice around it wasn't melting despite the thermal equipment they were using. The temperature readings showed that it should have been liquefying rapidly, but instead it remained perfectly solid, as if it were being maintained by some external force. The object itself defied classification. It appeared to be constructed from a metal that didn't match any known element, formed into shapes that followed geometric principles that human mathematics couldn't adequately describe. When they attempted to photograph it, the images came out distorted, showing patterns and configurations that weren't visible to the naked eye, exactly as Tommy's malfunctioning equipment had behaved 20 years earlier. As word of the discovery leaked to the scientific community, theories began to emerge that ranged from the plausible to the fantastic. Some researchers suggested that Chen's team had discovered evidence of a previously unknown ancient civilization that had possessed advanced technology. Others proposed that the object was extraterrestrial in origin, a crash site that had been buried by glacial movement over thousands of years. The most disturbing theory came from Dr. Martinez herself, who had spent more time studying the evidence than anyone else. Based on the arrangement of the equipment, the precision of the ice cave, and the mathematical patterns described in Chen's journal, she began to suspect that the 2003 expedition hadn't discovered the object by accident. They had been drawn to it, guided to it by forces they couldn't understand or control. The investigation took an even more unsettling turn when Martinez's team attempted to remove the object from its icy prison. Every attempt to extract the object triggered violent reactions from the glacier itself. The ice would crack and shift, creating unstable conditions that forced the team to retreat repeatedly. Seismic monitors detected tremors that originated from deep within the mountain, tremors that followed no known geological pattern. It was as if the glacier was actively resisting their efforts, protecting whatever lay hidden in its frozen depths. Dr. Martinez made the difficult decision to document everything in place rather than risk a catastrophic ice collapse. As her team worked to photograph and measure the object from every possible angle, they noticed something that chilled them more than the sub-zero temperatures. The ice around the object wasn't just refusing to melt, it was growing. New layers were forming at a rate that defied every known principle of glacial formation. Sarah Chen, the pilot who had first spotted the anomaly, returned to the site 3 days later to extract the research team. What she saw through her aircraft's windows made her question her own sanity. The ice cave that Martinez's team had spent days excavating was gone. In its place was solid glacier ice, as if the entire site had been sealed up again by forces beyond human understanding. The footage from Martinez's expedition was immediately classified at the highest levels of government security. The official report stated that the team had discovered some interesting ice formations and recovered personal effects from the missing mountaineers, but nothing more. The families of Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy were finally given closure, told that their loved ones had died in an avalanche and their remains had been recovered after 20 years in the ice. But the truth was far more complex. In the weeks following the expedition, strange reports began emerging from researchers around the world. Glaciologists in Antarctica reported unusual readings from their instruments, patterns that matched the mathematical sequences found in Dr. Chen's journal. Seismologists detected low-frequency vibrations emanating from ice sheets across the globe, vibrations that seemed to be increasing in intensity and coordination. Dr. Martinez found herself reassigned to a classified research facility in Colorado, her work on the Alaskan discovery deemed too sensitive for public consumption. The equipment her team had used to investigate the ice cave was confiscated, and all personnel involved in the expedition were required to sign non-disclosure agreements that would remain in effect for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, in a secure laboratory buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, scientists worked around the clock to analyze the samples Martinez's team had managed to collect before the site sealed itself. The ice core samples contained microscopic structures that didn't match anything in the known biological or geological record. The metal fragments scraped from the mysterious object showed atomic compositions that challenged the periodic table itself. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers attempted to date the materials using advanced carbon dating techniques. The results were impossible to reconcile with known science. Some samples appeared to be millions of years old, while others seemed to exist outside of time entirely, as if they had been frozen at the moment of their creation and remained unchanged despite the passage of eons. As months passed, the investigation expanded beyond the Alaskan discovery. Satellite imagery revealed similar anomalies in glaciers across the world, dark shapes moving beneath the ice, in patterns too organized to be natural. Research stations in Greenland reported equipment malfunctions that matched the descriptions in Tommy Rodriguez's recovered camera logs. Antarctic expeditions found carved ice tunnels that led deep into the continental ice sheet, tunnels that hadn't been there in previous surveys. The pattern that emerged suggested a global network of sites, all connected by some underlying intelligence that had been dormant for millennia. Dr. Chen's team hadn't just stumbled upon an isolated artifact. They had discovered evidence of something vast, ancient, and possibly still active beneath the world's ice sheets. Government agencies from multiple countries began coordinating their responses, sharing classified information about similar discoveries in their own territories. The public remained unaware, told only that climate research was revealing new insights into glacial formation and Ice Age history. But behind closed doors, military leaders and scientific advisors grappled with implications that threatened to reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The most chilling aspect of the investigation was the realization that the discoveries weren't random. Each site had been found by researchers who fit a specific profile, individuals with particular combinations of expertise and psychological characteristics. Dr. Chen's background in glaciology, Sarah's intimate knowledge of mountain environments, and Tommy's ability to document visual anomalies had made them perfect candidates for their unwitting role as discoverers. Analysis of their personal histories revealed subtle influences that had guided their paths toward that February expedition. Scholarships that had directed Chen toward glacial research, job opportunities that had brought Sarah to Alaska, film projects that had given Tommy experience with extreme environment documentation. The influences were so subtle, so carefully orchestrated over decades, that they appeared to be coincidences until viewed as part of a larger pattern. Dr. Martinez began to understand that her own career trajectory had followed a similar path. Her interest in glacial anomalies, her access to satellite imagery, even her assignment to study Dr. Chen's abandoned research, all seemed to have been orchestrated by forces she couldn't identify or comprehend. She was being guided toward discoveries that she was uniquely qualified to make, discoveries that served purposes beyond her understanding. The psychological profiles of researchers who had made similar discoveries worldwide showed remarkable similarities. They were all individuals who combined scientific rigor with intuitive thinking, people who could perceive patterns that others missed while maintaining the credibility to document their findings. They were, in essence, the perfect bridge between human science and something far more advanced. As winter approached in 2023, seismic activity around glacial sites increased dramatically. Ice sheets that had remained stable for centuries began showing signs of movement, shifting in patterns that suggested coordination rather than random geological processes. Research stations reported equipment failures, communication blackouts, and personnel experiencing shared dreams that featured mathematical sequences identical to those found in Dr. Chen's journal. The dreams were perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the entire investigation. Researchers from different continents, working on classified projects they couldn't discuss with each other, were experiencing identical visions. They saw vast chambers carved from ice, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, and the sensation of being observed by intelligences that existed on scales beyond human comprehension. Dr. Martinez found herself among those experiencing the dreams, visions that left her exhausted and filled with knowledge she couldn't quite grasp. She saw Dr. Chen's final moments, not as they had been recorded in his journal, but as they had actually occurred. The three mountaineers hadn't died in their ice cave. They had been transformed, incorporated into something larger than themselves, their individual consciousness preserved, but expanded beyond human limitations. The dream showed her Sarah Kowalski moving through ice tunnels with impossible grace, her knowledge of mountain environments enhanced by awareness of geological processes spanning millions of years. Tommy Rodriguez continued to document everything, but his cameras now captured spectra of light invisible to human eyes, recording events that occurred across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Chen pursued his research with access to data that encompassed the entire history of planetary climate. His understanding expanded to include factors that human science had never discovered. They weren't dead. They had been recruited. The realization that the 2003 expedition had been a recruitment rather than a tragedy forced a complete reevaluation of the investigation. The object buried in the glacier wasn't just a discovery waiting to be found. It was a selection mechanism, identifying individuals with the specific combination of skills and psychological characteristics needed for purposes that remained unclear. As global seismic activity continued to increase, researchers began to suspect that the recruitment process was accelerating. Similar disappearances were reported from research stations in Antarctica, Greenland, and Siberia. Always the same pattern: experienced researchers venturing into remote areas, following leads that promised groundbreaking discoveries, vanishing without trace, only to have their equipment found years later in impossible locations. The network beneath the ice was expanding, drawing in the most capable minds from humanity's scientific community. Each recruitment added new capabilities to whatever intelligence was orchestrating the process, building toward some purpose that remained hidden beneath layers of ice and secrecy. Dr. Martinez realized that her own investigation was leading her toward the same fate that had claimed Dr. Chen's team. The patterns in her research, the dreams that grew more vivid each night, the subtle influences guiding her toward specific discoveries all indicated that she was being prepared for recruitment. The question wasn't whether she would disappear like the others, but when and where it would happen. The ice was patient, as ice always is, but its patience was nearing an end. After millennia of dormancy, something vast and ancient was stirring beneath the glaciers of the world, and it was almost ready to reveal itself. The first signs that Dr. Martinez was running out of time came in December 2023, when her security clearance was abruptly revoked. No explanation was given, just a terse email from her department head instructing her to clear out her office and report to a debriefing session that never materialized. Her access to the classified files was terminated, her research materials confiscated, and her team disbanded without warning. But by then, it was already too late to stop what had been set in motion. The dreams had intensified to the point where Martinez could barely distinguish between sleeping and waking states. She found herself drawing geometric patterns in her notebooks, complex mathematical equations that she didn't remember learning. Her apartment walls were covered with satellite images of glacial formations from around the world, connected by red string in patterns that seemed to pulse with their own internal logic. To anyone observing from the outside, she appeared to be descending into obsession, possibly madness. But Martinez knew better. She was being prepared. The breakthrough came when she realized that the patterns in her dreams matched formations she had been tracking in real-time satellite feeds. Despite losing her official access, Martinez had maintained contact with researchers at monitoring stations worldwide. Through encrypted communications and back-channel information sharing, she discovered that the anomalous activity beneath global ice sheets was accelerating at an exponential rate. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a seismologist at an Antarctic research station, had been measuring tremors that originated from directly beneath the ice sheet. The vibrations followed mathematical progressions that matched the sequences found in Dr. Chen's journal. More disturbing, the tremors were getting stronger and more frequent, building towards something that Tanaka's instruments couldn't adequately measure. In Greenland, atmospheric physicist Dr. Eric Larson reported electromagnetic readings that defied conventional understanding. His equipment detected energy signatures emanating from deep within the ice sheet, signatures that pulsed in coordination with the seismic activity Tanaka was measuring in Antarctica. The two phenomena were separated by thousands of miles but synchronized to the microsecond, suggesting a level of coordination that implied vast intelligence. The Siberian research station had gone silent entirely. Dr. Anya Volkov and her team of 12 researchers had stopped responding to communications in early January 2024. Satellite imagery showed their facility intact but abandoned, with no signs of struggle or evacuation. Their last transmission had been a data burst containing ice core analysis results that showed the same impossible atomic structures Martinez's team had discovered in Alaska. As Martinez compiled reports from her network of researchers, a terrifying picture emerged. The recruitment process wasn't random or isolated. It was systematic, methodical, and global in scope. Every major ice sheet on the planet was showing signs of the same underlying activity. Something was awakening beneath the frozen surface of the Earth, and it was gathering the human resources it needed for purposes that remained hidden. The psychological profiles of the disappeared researchers revealed another disturbing pattern. They weren't just being selected for their scientific expertise. Each individual possessed a unique combination of analytical thinking and intuitive perception that made them ideal interfaces between human consciousness and something far more complex. They were translators, bridges between two entirely different forms of intelligence. Martinez realized that her own profile fit the pattern perfectly. Her background in glaciology provided the technical expertise needed to understand ice-based phenomena. Her experience with satellite imagery gave her the visual processing skills necessary to perceive patterns across vast scales. Her psychological evaluations showed the exact balance of skepticism and openness that characterized all the other recruited researchers. The dreams became so vivid that Martinez began experiencing them while awake. She would find herself standing in vast ice chambers that couldn't possibly exist, surrounded by geometric structures that hurt to perceive directly. In these visions, she encountered the missing researchers, but they were no longer entirely human. Their consciousness had been expanded, their awareness enhanced to encompass scales of space and time that human minds weren't designed to process. Dr. Chen appeared to her frequently in these experiences, his personality intact, but his understanding transformed. He explained that the recruitment process wasn't abduction or murder. It was evolution, an invitation to become part of something larger than individual human existence. The intelligences beneath the ice had been waiting for humanity to develop the scientific sophistication necessary to serve as conscious components in their vast network. According to Chen's transformed consciousness, the entities in the ice were not alien in the conventional sense. They were terrestrial, ancient beyond human comprehension, predating human civilization by millions of years. They had been dormant during the warm periods of Earth's history, active only during ice ages when their frozen environment provided the optimal conditions for their existence. The current awakening was triggered by climate change, but not in the way most humans understood it. As global warming melted surface ice, it was exposing deeper, more ancient ice that had remained frozen for geological ages. This ancient ice contained the preserved consciousness of entities that had been waiting for the right combination of planetary conditions and human development to resume their activities. The recruited researchers served as conscious interfaces, their human intuition and creativity combining with vast databases of geological and atmospheric information to solve problems on scales that pure artificial intelligence couldn't handle. They were becoming part of a hybrid consciousness that spanned continents, processing information across timescales that encompassed the entire history of planetary climate. Martinez understood that she was being offered the same transformation. The dreams weren't just visions, they were invitations. She could choose to resist, to maintain her individual human consciousness, and eventually die as her brain proved inadequate to process the expanding awareness being forced upon her. Or she could accept the integration, allowing her consciousness to expand beyond its biological limitations while retaining her essential identity as part of something vastly greater. The choice became urgent when Martinez discovered that she wasn't the only researcher receiving the invitation. Similar experiences were being reported by glaciologists, climatologists, and atmospheric physicists worldwide. The recruitment process was entering its final phase, gathering the last essential components needed for whatever the entities planned to accomplish. Government agencies had become aware of the global pattern, but their responses were fragmented and inadequate. Military installations near major ice sheets reported equipment malfunctions and personnel experiencing shared hallucinations. Intelligence services detected coordinated electromagnetic activity originating from beneath glaciers on every continent, but lacked the scientific expertise to understand what they were observing. The few researchers who remained outside the recruitment network were either dismissed as delusional or classified as security risks. Dr. Martinez found herself under surveillance, her communications monitored, her movements tracked by agents who clearly didn't understand the true scope of what they were investigating. They were treating the situation as a conventional threat, something that could be contained or controlled through traditional methods. But Martinez knew that containment was impossible. The entities beneath the ice had been planning this awakening for millennia, preparing for the moment when human civilization would develop the technological sophistication they needed. Every major breakthrough in glaciology, climatology, and atmospheric physics had been subtly influenced to accelerate human understanding of ice-based phenomena. The researchers being recruited weren't random victims. They were the culmination of a breeding and education program that spanned generations. The truth about what happened on Mount McKinley in 2003 wasn't a tragedy. It was an appointment that had been scheduled for millennia. Dr. Chen, Sarah, and Tommy didn't vanish into the ice. They became part of something far greater than human understanding. As glaciers worldwide continue their ancient awakening, one question remains. When the entities beneath the ice finally reveal their purpose, will humanity be ready for what comes next? Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to solve us. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.